Welcome again. Welcome back to another edition of BINALOT Talks. So for those of you that who aren't super aware of what the BINALOT Talks are, they are a weekly series held by ASP, the Archaeological Studies Program, where we invite speakers from different backgrounds. Not just from archaeology, but from law, from history, from architecture, all these different backgrounds to speak about whatever and everything. So we have the pleasure today to have Donaire for our speaker today, who I'll properly introduce later. But we're continuing on the theme of pandemic-related issues, which I think would be a really interesting, which today's topic would be really interesting to see. So yeah, um, as far as announcements, I don't think we have any. But also before we officially start and I introduce the speaker, let me also introduce the team. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Arturo, or JJ as I'm known throughout ASP. I'll be your moderator for today, and my co-moderator, if her internet connection can be stable, will be Anna Pineda, or A Pineda, as her username is on Zoom. The tech person for today, our go-to tech person for the BINALOT Talks is Ara1 or Ara Espigar. So if you have any issues at all throughout the talk, you can either PM me, Anna, or Ara. So yeah, I think that's all housekeeping for now. So let me introduce the speaker for today and his co-author who sadly couldn't attend today, but he's with us in spirit. So today our speaker, Paul Ray Donaire, is a freshman taking AB sociology at Diliman University. He's part of the weekly Silimanian, the school publication, as a featured writer. During his gap year, he worked as a research intern at the Philippine Consortium for Social Welfare and Human Development Research. And Falgui Law, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the Falgui Law Office. At the same time, he conducted research. He conducted research titled "Law and Disorder: Lawyering in the COVID-19 Pandemic," which he presented at the Philippine Sociological Society International Conference of last year, 2021. His co-author for today's BINALOT Talk is Marco Aguia. He's currently a lecturer in the sociology department at Mindanao State University, Gensan. He is a director of research at the Philippine Consortium for Social Welfare and Human Development Research. He was then an instructor in the College of Arts and Science at Holy Trinity College of General Santos City. So, without further ado, please take it away, Ray.
Thank you so much, sir, for that warm introduction. So, can you guys see the presentation?
Yeah, all good. Full screen.
Thank you. So, again, thank you. I am Ray, and together with me in this study is Sir Marco Aguja. However, he won't be able to join with us today due to personal reasons. But anyway, I will be presenting to you or giving you an insight on the topic law and disorder, lawyering the COVID-19 pandemic. So to begin with the presentation, let's start with the introduction. So this is where we know how or what the research is all about and how the research goes. So we all know that the pandemic emerged sometime in March 2019, which greatly impacted the world in general. The social structure, social science in general, or the engineers of society to be exact. So just like any other workforces, it also disrupted the structure of lawyering in terms of dealing with cases, dealing with pleadings, hearings, or just having to talk with their clients. And the COVID-19 pandemic has its adverse effects to lawyers. Then it may be depression, anxiety, and burnt out. Kasi they are being forced din to adapt with the new setup, the new normal setting, in which they have to transition from physical working to remote working. So the statement of the problem goes as, what is the situation of lawyers during the COVID-19 pandemic? How does lawyering operate in the COVID-19 pandemic? And how do lawyers perceive the new normal? So just to give you a brief description or the brief overview of the methodology, this study is a knowledge exchange or KE paper utilizing a qualitative method. It employs key informant interviews. The participating lawyers based at General Santos City, Philippines. Initially, it was but due to three lawyers. Uh, of course, via snowballing sampling, tools such as voice recording was used for transcription purposes. Participants were informed of the consent and preventive measures. And last, the strict health protocols were observed. So let's proceed with the important or exciting part of this topic. So our first results and discussion is how essential is lawyering during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, it is a profession that relies on the people, basically speaking. Without the people leading legal services, lawyers wouldn't exist. Same goes as without lawyers, cases wouldn't be solved. So despite the pandemic, cases are increasing and still piling up in the court, hence making lawyers as busy as during pre-pandemic periods. However, this time may changes na, to which minimum health standards are being observed. There are being observed the health interventions such as maintaining social distance, wearing of mask, and all of those protocols mandated by the IITF. And there are existing cases, but then during these are cases during pre-pandemic, and there are also cases that transpire during post-pandemic, and that needs to be worked on. So lawyers are still essential in the continuation of transactions such as notary amid the pandemic, because it's not all about pleadings. It's not all about the case hearings. Lawyers are also giving importance to other legal matters such as notary or like notary, a notarization of legal documents such as affidavits and motions. So we can say that just like any other workforces, lawyering is still as essential as other workforces, even in COVID-19 pandemic, because we are a country that is overseen by laws and constitutions. So for our next results and outbreak impacted. First thing first, it prevented the movement of lawyers. As I mentioned before, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the structure of lawyering in terms of engaging with clients, diba? Kasi lawyers are innately a face-to-face job. It's a social job wherein they have to interact with other people. Traditionally, they have to interact face-to-face, but now they do it sometimes virtually. So ngayon, lawyers are very conscious of their surroundings when they have to engage with their clients face to face. They get worried about in terms of baka ma-inflict sila with the virus. So today, lawyers need to take a serious precaution. And this pandemic has forced lawyers to adapt to the new normal. And the major adjustment is the transition from physical work to remote working. Take for example the virtual hearings or virtual virtual legal counseling, diba? However, with the ongoing internet issues in our country, it presents as detrimental to the decision making of a case. Additionally, virtual hearings hinder lawyers and even judges from examining the demeanor of the witnesses. Kasi in virtual hearing, diba? Like you can see the witnesses, but you don't know how maybe the witnesses are being guided by someone, which is not uh, which is not good in court hearing, and they are being, kumbaga, in a way na they're being conscious of the witnesses in the sense that they're not in the close proximity of the judges, or they're not in the close proximity of the lawyers, wherein a security is tight. So as much as they oppose the idea, lawyers are afraid that shenanigans might occur during virtual hearings. These shenanigans include uh, power interruption, internet issues, or 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 technical difficulties such as uh, like the witnesses or the case or the accused or the plaintiffs are or cannot attend the virtual hearings because they don't know how to do it. So that's how the COVID-19 outbreak impacted lawyering in terms of hearings uh, and legal counseling. So for our next results and discussion is how are lawyers coping during the COVID pandemic and how. So since there are many adjustments that need to be made, lawyers must adhere to it as their job relies on the people and they interact socially with their clients. Yet despite the adjustments, the demand is not reducing. So uh, as the day goes by, more and more cases are uprising in the court, and ang kawawa dito are those in the public or in the government or yung mga tinatawag natin public attorneys. So, but to answer the question, are they coping up during the COVID-19 pandemic? In this study, the answer is yes. The pandemic has been going on for 2 years and a half, and since humans are known to be adaptable to their environment, lawyers are or themselves are now well versed in how this new normal runs daily. So for our next is lawyers' view on remote working. So there are advantages and disadvantages to remote working, and I think this goes to other workforces too. But let's begin with the advantages of it. So the benefit includes or concludes that it prevented the pervasive transmission of the virus because virus can't be transmitted through virtual hearings. It also helps lawyers to be, like the hustle of going to the court, the hustle of going to the office just to attend hearings or for clients to attend meetings. In this case, remote working is a beneficial because it paves way for clients residing in far-flung areas to acquire legal counseling from lawyers to phone calls or other modes of communication. So in this case, they can just call each other, ganon. So it really benefits not just the lawyers, but also the clients then. However, the disadvantages of this remote work is that it undermines the aspect of an attorney-client relationship. One of the participants said na legal counseling usually lasts for about an hour. And in this conversation, hindi lang, it's not all about serious talk. It's all about having to create bonds or make bonds with your clients. And in this case, via the virtual hearings or through phone calls or other modes of communication, nawawala yung essence of attorney and client relationship. And a lawyer's objective is to build connections with clients in order to gather as much information as they see fit. And in this case din kasi, in virtual hearings, there are information that are being overlooked. So the tendencies are lawyers will have to call their clients na, hey, can you give me more information about this? Or the clients will have to call their lawyers for additional information that is or that might be beneficial for the case. So that's the disadvantages, yung nawawala, the lack of information. So there is a need for spontaneous conversation and to laugh with the clients in order to be able to develop a sincere relationship. That's why many lawyers are still reporting to their office as much as they can so that they can conduct a physical meeting or a physical interaction. So for the next is descriptions on the structure of lawyering during the COVID-19 pandemic. So today is, I don't like what's the term of this object, pero yung parang shield, or whenever you go to an offices or any offices that offer social services, diba, like their desk, the corner of the desk has this clear tarpaulins, and yun meron din ganun sa law offices. They install it to prevent the transmission of the virus, and at the same time they have posters administering safety protocols to remind the clients to maintain distance, to wear their mask all the time, and all those health interventions. And at the same time, there is a limit as to how many people can enter the premises. So based on my experience as an intern of a law firm for a year, if your objective is just to notarize your documents or magpagawa ka ng affidavits or motions, and you bring with you have someone with you, there's a tendency, or it's likely na you're the only one who can enter the premise. But if your objective and you're with someone, let's say like there are 5 of you, and your objective is to have a legal counseling, then all of you can enter the premise. So there is a case-to-case basis on this. So today, it's a best to set an appointment with a lawyer, kasi based on my experience as well, is that may mga tendency that lawyers have abrupt meetings. So yung mga walk-ins, especially the walk-ins, are overlooked, or minsan tinataboy ng lawyers because they have to go to an abrupt meeting, they have to go to a hearing, or minsan kahit yung mga scheduled clients, they are sometimes overlooked, they are sometimes tinataboy ng lawyers because lawyers have other things to do. But in this setup, in this new normal setup, it's always best to set an appointment so that lawyers can be informed ahead of time, so that they would also expect your visit. And at the same time, delays sometimes present a reasonable cost. It is beneficial when the lawyer is experiencing health problems or the clients themselves. So delays in terms of hearings, diba? Like there are times kasi na hearings will be postponed, or hearings will be opt for initially for physical hearings, but they will opt for virtual hearings. So it will help lawyers, or it will benefit lawyers, or even the clients when they have when they're experiencing health problems. So for the next result and discussion, how draining is it for lawyers to work remotely? So remote work isn't only the issue here, it's also the mental health. So our lawyers' mental health has suffered as a result of the pandemic. So take for instance the paranoia of getting inflicted by the virus. Like lawyers are also humans, and humans tend to get scared, diba? So and considering the scarcity of vaccines, some lawyers are still not vaccinated during that time, like starting ng pandemic. So it's something draining for lawyers to work remotely at the same time, because they have to be conscious of the virus to help prevent the transmission of the virus. And at the same time, the worst case scenario kasi someone in their family might die, or during the pandemic, or due to the virus. So these extrinsic forces are pressuring them during remote work. So for the result For another result, lawyers' thoughts in providing legal services despite their health is at risk. So yes, it is risky, but the purpose of profession matters more. As I have mentioned before, it's lawyering is essential, whether it be pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, because we are overseen by law and by laws and constitution. Every day, there is likely not there are filing of cases. People are likely to overstep or go beyond, diba, the laws that is implemented. So lawyering is very important because judicial is part of our government system, and lawyers is to carry on the flow of our judicial system. So lawyers didn't finish law school for nothing, diba? They became lawyers because they wanted to help people genuinely in legal matters. So in spite of the virus, despite the pandemic, despite the health intervention that is implemented, they love and are passionate uh, about their profession more than they fear the virus. So risky it might be, but the love for the work or their profession matters more. So for the next results and discussion, situations on the on-site court hearings during COVID-19 pandemic. So there is a big change in the court. Anyone can enter the court provided that they follow the rules inside the court. So today, there is a limit to access. Not only are specific individuals and specific quantities of people are quantities of people allowed to enter. So they must adhere to the safety protocols implemented by the court. So based on my experience then, there are times na when the court staff or even the judge themselves are infected by the virus, there is likely na it will automatically result to postponement, diba? And this postponement of hearings is the reason for this is because they have to sanitize the area, and sometimes postponements lead to another scheduled or lead to case being scheduled, and which is often scheduled in the next few months or worse the next year. So in this case, grabe ang impact, grabe ang disorder ng such postponement to can lead to a very impactful sa cases that needs to be prioritized, diba? Like even just yung mga appearances cases, na appearances hearings are postponed and rescheduled for the next few months or even next year. So it greatly impacted our law as general in a way that it disorder our flow of judicial system. Then at the same time, our municipal trial court do not have the option to opt for virtual hearings. So attorneys and clients really have to attend the physical hearing at the court, and at the same time, sometimes safety protocols are not being observed. So that's the problem then with how hearings are being conducted during the COVID pandemic. So for the next is our lawyers' perception towards the new normal. So basically, the new normal for them is adhering to non-pharmaceutical interventions such as your maintaining distance, wearing of mask, and all of those. So the new normal is something na it's like a product of moderation. It limits their access kumbaga, from the traditional procedure of face-to-face work in providing legal advice and conducting court hearings now result to virtual hearings. And at the same time, like our social issues in terms of technical problems like internet issues, or some people are not very techy. So that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems with the new normal setup. And to think that our country is not yet innovative, or like people are not yet innovative in terms of having this technology, it results to uh, limitations to legal proceedings. So during the key informant interview, one of the parties one of the participants, when asked what is new normal to you, he answered with great conviction na the new normal is something abnormal to me. So in that sense lang na, as a researcher, it's really something na that you can really get from a participant na, even though it's not something of very worthy or very uh, how should I say this, flowery. So in that phrase lang, it really, kumbaga, it really makes me view the new normal as different, diba? So indeed it is. So back then they used to go outside without the fear of coronavirus. Today they have to take extra precautions. So the perception towards the new normal is that new normal, as in general, is an abnormality. So how well adjusted lawyers are during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in this study, we have examined they adjusted well during the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of adapting to virtual hearings or virtual conducts in general. But this depends on the lawyer situation. So in this study, there are three participating lawyers, diba? So two of them are seniors in the profession, and one is, or they refer themselves as the younger generation. So this younger generation, like since the seniors have more experience in conducting legal proceedings, they're more experienced in law. So despite the remote or virtual court hearings, they know what to do. But however, the younger generation still finds it hard, that they need to learn more, not because of the adjustments, but because they still lack experience in legal proceedings or in legal counseling in general. So at the end of the day, it really depends on the lawyers, because these former lawyers, the one we call the seniors, might be not experiencing hardship in terms of conducting legal counseling, legal proceedings, but they might be having a hard time dealing with technicalities, like let's say the virtual, yung mga computer, how to access the computer, how to access the modes of communication. But for the latter, for the younger generation, they might find it easy to access virtual hearings, virtual legal proceedings. But in catering clients in terms of legal proceeding, they need more experience to it. So it really depends on the lawyer on how they cope up, kumbaga. But when it comes to physical aspect of the pandemic, all of them are adjusting well. So as per them, the participants, their policy recommendations in improving the structure of lawyering during the COVID-19 pandemic, first is proper recordings, limit the number of hearings per day. In court kasi they itemize it. So kahit so in one day, jump pack ang mga hearings per day. So for them, there should be a limit, mga cater na maayos. Set an effective court proceeding scheduling, because sometimes the schedules are not being followed. The schedules are not being disseminated well. Kaya minsan wala sa flow ang mga lawyers to attend the proceedings. And this can lead to a detrimentation of the cases. Sometimes it can be dismissed kasi wala may nag-attend, kasi they're not informed of the court proceedings. So what they do, based on my experience, is that the secretary of the law firm is uh, every day they try to reach out with the court staff regarding the scheduling of the hearings to to secure na ito it will be conducted today, or this will not be conducted, this will be rescheduled, just to have an effective court proceedings. And for a fourth, ensures a stricter preventive measures during physical hearings. Although in court there are limits as to how many people can enter, there are times na they although people are in inside the court, sometimes they do not follow the basic protocols, and they're not being uh parang kumbaga, like they're not being sinasabihan or like reprimanded for that. So ensures for them it has to be stricter preventive measures during physical hearings. And for recommendation as a general, for lawyers, be adaptable of the situation, because it's it's an everyday job, and almost wala kang pahinga as a lawyer. So be adaptable. Kahit ano man mangyari, be adaptable, because your work relies on people. So as for the conclusion, we can include that lawyering has been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The law itself is significantly impacted in a way that it disordered the flow of the judicial system. Na the postponement, especially, grabe ang rescheduling of hearings, or the case hearings, to the point na it will be rescheduled for the next few months, or even the next year. So it really disordered the flow of the judicial system. At the same time, we can conclude na although adjustments have been made and lawyers are successfully adjusted in the new normal setting, there are still cases na lawyers are having a hard time finding the right time management, kumbaga, in a way that they have to cater, kasi they have to cater a lot of clients, and they have cases every day, they have hearings every day, and considering that the court themselves is not effective in setting schedules in court proceedings, they find it hard to cope up with the law, of how the law works, of how the judicial system works. But in terms of new normal setting, on the transition from physical hearing to virtual hearing, they have adjusted in the new normal setting. And of course, pandemic is inevitable. It goes beyond our expectation. Thus, adaptability comes a long way. So just for recommendation, let's start with the research recommendation is to conduct more KIIs to gather more narratives on how lawyers cope up with the pandemic. Utilize qualitative methods. This can include the rate of, let's say, the mental health, the depression, anxiety, and all that stuff. So conduct more studies of similar nature needs to be done in different places. This is for yung mga audiences na who wants to conduct the same research, just to give you a recommendation. And for the policy recommendation of this study is to improve virtual hearings, limit hearings per day, set an effective scheduling, and ensures proper safety measures in the courts. And that ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ray, for that presentation. I think it's a really interesting perspective to have, to see from the perspective of lawyers how, their day-to-day life is affected in the pandemic. As we all know, the pandemic has really shifted our lives drastically. But to see that, the lawyers themselves have adapted, maybe not in the best of ways, but they have adapted nonetheless, which is promising to see. And yeah, I'm glad that you do have recommendations towards the end, because I think that it's a good chance to not only strive for a better system, but also look upon ourselves and see how our day-to-day lives could be adjusted here and there, so that we could slowly transition back to, the new normal, or even, just make our day-to-day lives better, considering the fact that, we're still doing, stuff like the BINALOT talk, which was once an in-person event online. And, we're thriving in our own way here, which is really interesting to see. But, just in my digression, I think that I really enjoyed your presentation. So thank you. Yeah, so right now we're gonna open this section right now to the Q&A section. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you could do it of one of three ways. You could use the under the reaction tab in the bottom of your screen. You could raise your hands, and then we'll call you up so that you could ask your question in person, or in person. You can type it in the chat and we'll read it aloud, or alternatively, you could PM myself, Ana Pineda, or Ara, and then we'll read your question anonymously. So, again, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Yeah, Anna, go ahead.
I do have a question. So thank you for that, Ray. That was a wonderful talk. And I think I was talking to someone else that I was mentioning that I really like the design of your presentation. And that was very clean and very precise. So I also took some notes. I was wondering when it comes to the you mentioned that now that lawyering has changed as well. But do you think that this also harkened the digitalization of a lot of the court cases? And what can you say about the digitization of court cases and how it's being handled, and also how court documents and also legal documents are also being handled? So what can you say about that?
So based on my experience then as an intern, so in terms of digitization, it's a good alternative for a virtual or a court hearings, because it lessens the hassle of lawyers or even clients or even the court staff, diba? Like in conducting court hearings, court proceedings. However, in my experience, in terms of documentation, the legal documents, it's not yet kumbaga used in digital ba. Kumbaga they are not being put in digital system kasi they are afraid that it can be breached ba. Kumbaga. So it's still physical. The documents are still physical. But
okay.
Yeah, but yun, the court hearings in terms of conducting it virtual hearings, it's a better alternative in like preventing the virus.
But how will this with this, how do they address the security issues? Is it being addressed? Is it going to be because it looks like that's the trend throughout the entire world, and whatever happens, we can't go. The paper trails is becoming more digitized version. So, and I think that's also one of the things that the pandemic really showed is that digital these simple methods such as emails, SMS, and also scanning all the documents for better accessibility and readability is becoming more prevalent. So in the Philippines, I think, I don't know, in many cases, especially in the academia, that's also one of the things that we've all been doing, even in different universities have had to struggle with going online and giving classes online, and there's a good precursor already in some open universities. However, when it comes to this one, how does it work? How did the people work on that? How do you think that lawyering can address this trend while still ensuring better security, data security and privacy among their clients and also amongst throughout the Philippines?
Uh, So so what they do is they also do a scanning of documents, and they send it through emails, or they contact courts through emails. In terms of addressing the problems with the notion of breaching, so far there hasn't been an explanation to that. There hasn't been a solution for that, as what I've researched. But yeah, uh, in terms of like diba, like during the conduct of court hearings or virtual hearings, one of the hardest for lawyers and even judges is yung uh, examine the demeanor nga, diba? The demeanor of the witnesses, and sometimes we can't assure na these witnesses are ano are being kumbaga are being, how should I say this, uh like parang they might be guided by someone, or worse, by the lawyers, diba? They're not supposed to be guided by lawyers. That's why in physical court hearings they are in front to get to secure them from guidance from other outside forces, diba?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I have a question as well. I guess in terms of from I guess from the scope and from the perspective of lawyers, has I guess the number of people seeking out lawyers throughout the pandemic changed, and like in what sort of ways has that changed? Like, are they more I guess I'm not really familiar with like how people approach lawyers, but I guess did you see like a shift in the way that people seek out lawyers, and especially in what types of problems or issues people seek lawyers out for? I guess is my question.
They they use sometimes they use phones, other modes of communication such as Messenger, Viber, and all that, and among others. But mostly they ask for legal counseling in terms of, in my case, it's more on real estate problems.
Mhm.
It's more on criminal cases and civil cases.
And then I guess a sort of follow up to that, um, I guess are there any issues with people who have I guess limited access to technology, like let's say like a computer, or like is there a certain threshold I guess that people use to like contact or work with lawyers on a particular issue or problem that they have?
Oh, so I guess that's the limitation of my research, because we haven't delved really into that problem.
Mhm.
How do clients approaches their lawyers in case na they're from far-flung areas? But I think in my case, as I work as an intern in a law firm, they really have to go to the law firms to they really have to approach the lawyers physically, because these cases are sometimes not kumbaga like conducive in virtually. So it's something that should be discussed physically, because there are information that can be overlooked.
Although it's interesting that this is how it's being blended, right? So it's especially in a country that also has a lot of Facebook users, for example. And so why don't we take advantage of that? And there's a lot of people who are having difficulties talking to lawyers, especially I mean in a lot of uh, communities that are very far away, so it might be difficult to engage with them, uh to look for people who might be helpful for to them. So it's something that can be used. Maybe it's with the various tools that we currently have, and how we can adjust to the capacities that the technological limitations that we may have. It's also surprising, like for example, Zoom. This is being mostly used, and a lot of other technologies had to rush to get to catch up, such as even Facebook meetings. I don't know what for Facebook now. And because this is such a prevalent messenger is such a prevalent uh, app being used throughout the entire Philippines, and even Viber. So DOH, Department of Health, is the one they always give out announcements through Viber. So almost everyone can use Viber. That's the most useful. Those are the two most useful things. So that kind of eliminates geographic boundaries. So if you want it, technically it should make it easier for people to start engaging with regards to legal capacities. It's just the nitty-gritty, the end point, I guess. So when you're starting to talk, you can just start out with that. But when it comes to the court hearings, then that becomes the issue. But that kind of also eliminates, hopefully, barriers with regards to that includes uh, what do you call it, the uh, status, because if everyone has access to this method of messaging, then already you remove the capacity of the concept of walk in. So the walk in is now through text. So that might be another way of looking at it. That like and that might also create jobs for some lawyers who have issues regarding time management, especially if they're very much in demand. Then they can hire people who will work the on their scheduling, right? So it's also a matter of utilizing what's available to us. And there's a private message for me that mentioned consultation fees are also very high and probably not yet accessible. That's true. Although there are, but maybe I'm also thinking about the ones that the lawyers that I know who are part of the non-profit organization. So that's also different as well. But yes, the consultation fees are still very high. But the fact of actually going to their office and having to spend one day to travel just to have a 10-minute conversation, that kind of eliminates it, especially if there's a way to send a text and chat online. So yeah. So what's next for you, Ray? Are you going to pursue this research?
I was planning to actually during my TSS conference, we were planning to publish it for the international conference publication, but I refused because I was still in like I was at an outside school youth battalion, but yeah,
Out of school youth. Yeah.
out of school youth. Yeah.
Mhm.
So so in my mind, gusto ko like chill lang muna and just to
Alright.
pursue.
Well, now
And
it's you're now associated with an institute, so you can.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
I'm planning to publish it,
All right.
hopefully.
All right. That's a great news. I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people when they start rethinking concepts about activities, especially post-pandemic. JJ, sorry, you were
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. I had another question, which I guess it pertains to, I guess, new lawyers and like people who are still currently in the academe, and learning, the intricacies of law. I was wondering if you would know, has this change in the way that like the world of law and lawyering affected the way that it's being taught in schools, like in terms of like how new students get adopted, or graduates being adopted into the workforce, or the way that teachers teach? Like, do you know of any changes that happen in that training
Mhm.
process?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Yeah, so I guess, is the curriculum of law, at the undergraduate graduate level, has it been affected at all in the way that it's being taught because of the pandemic, or is it still sort of a similar it's still
Or
being taught the same way, but once you get to the workforce, then you adapt to the new facets of lowering in the pandemic?
oh, you mean like a law subjects in?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Is there like a law subject of like law in the pandemic or something like that?
So
Or
far in my
adjusting?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
so far, I don't have any subject in terms of law,
Mhm.
but I think it it didn't change naman so far the law in curriculum, because law is it's broad, it's what kumbaga, like kung ano yung nasa papel, yun na yun.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
So in terms of like disseminating the information of laws, it it won't be changed because it's ano na, kumbaga, it's tangible na.
Mm.
It's intangible rather. Ang ganun.
I guess one of the things that could probably change is the wordings when it comes to
Yeah.
the documentations and what might be constituted as legal or uh, public documents, especially, and what is a concept of a public document in discourse of electronic exchanges, things like that. What can be used in courts, so um, probably that's going to be the long term uh, uh, effect that's going to be taught in school. And I guess one of the things that's nice about this is that the pandemic is not just it didn't just affect one sector. It affected different sectors, who many of which will be likely going into law school eventually, or experience the pandemic. So they'll all be taking in their experiences through this, in the hope, I would hope that things will change, and legalities will be updated, because I do think that, and it makes sense. I understand what you're saying, Ray, that uh, the concept of lawyering is very essential. But I think that's also something that has to be done, and it's not just an issue for lawyers. Is that how, despite being relevant, how can we still adjust to the changing modalities of uh, of exchanges, and given the limitations, and given the possible limitations of health and pandemic issues, uh, and then, right, so all these things have to be addressed, and also technology is also changing. So can how can the practice of law, and not just law but other things, adjust to it? So it's I guess that's probably the next step, I would also say. So you can add to that, because there's no, when we people think of the new normal as if it's just a return to what happened before, but in reality there should already be some changes, because we learned from the experience. So what are the things that we can now take from the pandemic, and from our experiences from the pandemic, that we can push forward, instead of just going back to the old days just because it's how nakasanayan, it's traditional? Then there's no point, right? There's no point in experiencing uh, all these things and just saying that, oh, it's time to go back to the past. It's time to go back to how we were used to it. There has to be something that changes. And I think lawyering is the practice of lawyering in the Philippines should also be addressed to with that. the issues that you mentioned that came up from when you were talking up to the lawyers. Gradually, as everything is opening up now, is it just going? Is it now going to be more acceptable to go back to people who will knock on the doors and wait for long lines just to talk to a lawyer? So, or how do we adjust to that? How do the new lawyers adjust to this, considering that we now have, or we should be acknowledging that there is accessible technologies within our grasp, right? And then it's more forward thinking. So I think that's if possible, if you're if you wish to expand on this, that would be cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I was planning like to make another research in terms of like how make it digitized. So is it the Philippine or like the Philippine lawyers are ready for digital documents? Now I actually want to make a research about that.
Yeah, definitely. And to see if there, if like, I don't know, if you can pilot a small staff to
Mhm.
make it more digitized, how can they adjust? Or if there's already one, then not necessarily a very highfalutin law office
Yeah.
partnership, but even just a small one, and just have to develop a framework where they di- might include the digitization of their works. I think that might be worthwhile. And then you can just look through it, um, note down what's happening, what uh, what's more acceptable and what's not working, things like that. So that should be a cool work for you and for your colleagues, of course. So that's a good thing. I think this is interesting. I'm lawyering is never, it is just something that exists in the background for us, for me anyway. But it's it's really interesting to see how things are adjusting, especially when it comes to the pandemic. So yeah, thank you for that, JJ.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think in terms of if there are sort of any last minute questions that people may have, I think now's the right time to ask, considering that we are coming up on time, you know. So yeah, yeah, does anyone have any last minute questions before we officially end today's Binal Talk? But yeah, if not, then I think yeah, we're good to go to close on this today. So again, we want to thank our speaker for the day, Ray, uh, and also your co-author who again is with us in spirit. Yeah, so I think we have the title for next week. So if Anna, you want to go ahead and present next
All
week's talk.
right. Okay, so thank you very much, Ray Donaire. For next week, we will have Theo Karsti or Kurt Tandog from University of the Philippines, Mindanao, who will give a talk entitled Kwentong Lumad bilang naratibo ng protesta, or Indigenous Stories as Narratives of Protest. So let's watch out for that. But for now, thank you so much to Ray for giving this talk. For everyone for attending, we will be posting this on YouTube, so watch out for that. In the meantime, you can also check out our Facebook page for information regarding the next BINALOT Talks or for the past BINALOT Talks. If you're also interested, you can also check out our YouTube channel and see our previous BINALOT Talks from the previous speakers. But for now, we would like to thank Ray and your co-author, Marco.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for this, and thank you for agreeing to give this talk. That was really that makes me think. So now I think I still have more questions, so I'll probably also talk to you about that separately. But in the meantime, thank you everyone, and we will see you next week at 1 p.m. Bye.
Thank you.